I want to talk to you today about something deeply personal, something many of us feel but rarely talk about, the experience of being a woman with no friends. It's not a label anyone chooses willingly, is it? Yet for some of us, life unfolds in ways we never expected, and we find ourselves navigating this world not in the company of others, but in the quiet presence of ourselves. If you've ever felt this way, I want you to know that I see you. I feel your pain, your frustration, and the questions that linger in your heart. Why don't I have friends? What's wrong with me? Am I too much, or maybe not enough? These thoughts can feel like chains, binding you to a version of yourself that isn't whole. But I'm here to tell you that solitude doesn't mean brokenness. Solitude can mean power. It can mean freedom. Let's start by being honest about how hard it can feel. I know what it's like to look around and see women with their tight-knit groups, laughing, sharing, leaning on each other. And then there's you, wondering why your phone doesn't light up with invitations, why the people you once trusted have drifted away, or why you can't seem to find your place in a world that values connection so deeply. It hurts, doesn't it? And it's okay to acknowledge that pain. Don't push it away. Sit with it. Feel it. Because only when we allow ourselves to feel can we begin to heal. But here's the truth. Being alone doesn't mean being unworthy. It doesn't mean you're not lovable, interesting, or deserving of connection. Sometimes it simply means that life is asking something different of you. Sometimes it's asking you to step back from the noise, the expectations, and the pressure to fit in so that you can meet yourself fully. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? Not the version of you that tries to please others, or the one that hides behind a smile to avoid seeming vulnerable. I'm talking about the real you, the one who has dreams, fears, desires, and so much untapped strength. That woman is waiting for you in the quiet of solitude. She's not broken. She's not incomplete. She's powerful. I remember a time in my life when I felt utterly disconnected from the world. I felt invisible, like no one truly saw me for who I was. And for a while, I let that feeling define me. I told myself stories about why I wasn't enough, why I didn't deserve the friendships I longed for. But something changed when I stopped searching for validation outside of myself and started looking inward. It wasn't an easy process, and it didn't happen overnight. But little by little, I began to understand that the relationship I had with myself was the foundation for everything else. I want you to take a moment and reflect on this. What would it look like if you became your own best friend? If instead of waiting for someone else to offer you love, support, or kindness, you gave those things to yourself? It's a radical idea, isn't it? We're so conditioned to believe that we need others to complete us, to make us feel valuable. But the truth is, you already have everything you need within you. There's an incredible power in learning to stand on your own. When you stop seeking external approval and start cultivating self-approval, you become unstoppable. And this isn't about shutting people out or pretending you don't need connection. It's about understanding that your worth doesn't depend on it. It's about realizing that even if the world doesn't show up for you in the way you hoped, you can still show up for yourself. One of the most transformative moments in my journey was realizing that solitude wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. In those moments of quiet, I learned to hear my own voice, to trust my own instincts, and to find peace in my own company. And that's what I want for you. I want you to see that this time of solitude isn't a punishment. It's a gift. It's an opportunity to rediscover who you are, free from the noise and influence of others. I know it's not easy. I know there are days when the silence feels unbearable, when you long for a hand to hold or a voice to reassure you that you're not alone. And it's okay to feel that way. But don't let those moments define you. Instead, let them remind you of your strength. Let them show you that even in the absence of others, you are enough. Because here's the thing, solitude isn't about isolation. It's about connection. The kind of connection that begins within and radiates outward. It's about building a foundation so strong that no matter who comes or goes in your life, you remain whole. It's about finding power in the one relationship that will never leave you, the one you have with yourself. So, if you're a woman with no friends, I want you to hold your head high. I want you to know that you are not defined by your circumstances. You are defined by the love and respect you give yourself. And in that love, you will find freedom. In that respect, you will find power. And in that power, you will discover the incredible woman you were always meant to be. Let's continue our journey together, exploring what it means to find power in solitude. I know it's not always easy to hear phrases like, "You already have everything you need within you," because when loneliness sits heavily on your chest, it's hard to believe there's anything inside but emptiness. But trust me, there's so much more within you than you realize. When I think about solitude, I often imagine it as a mirror, not just a reflection of who you are on the surface, but a deep, unfiltered view of your inner self. It's a chance to see yourself clearly, without distractions or the masks we sometimes wear to fit into the world around us. But looking into that mirror can be scary, can't it? There's nowhere to hide. You see everything, the beauty, the pain, the dreams you've put on hold, and the fears you've tried to ignore. I remember a time when I avoided that mirror at all costs. I filled my days with noise, work, obligations, anything that kept me too busy to sit with myself. But no matter how hard I tried, the quiet moments would always find me. At first, they felt like intrusions. They forced me to confront feelings I didn't want to face. But over time, I realized those moments weren't my enemy. They were invitations. They were saying, "Come home to yourself. You've been away for too long." And so, slowly, I began to accept the invitation. I started spending time with myself, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I treated it like I would any other relationship, investing care and effort into getting to know myself again. I asked myself questions that I'd never dared to ask before. What do you really want? What brings you joy? What are you afraid of? And do you know what I discovered? There was a world inside of me that I had barely begun to explore. There were dreams I had buried, thinking they were too far out of reach. There were parts of myself that I had neglected because I was too busy trying to be what others expected me to be. When you start to peel back the layers, it can be overwhelming. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes, solitude forces you to confront your shadows, those parts of yourself that you'd rather keep hidden. But here's the thing, those shadows don't make you weak or unworthy. They make you human. And the more you embrace them, the less power they hold over you. One of the most beautiful lessons I've learned is that solitude doesn't just reveal who you are, it also reveals who you can become. It shows you your potential, your resilience, and your ability to create a life that feels authentic and fulfilling, even without the validation of others. For me, this meant letting go of the belief that I needed to be fixed. I wasn't broken because I didn't have a large circle of friends. I wasn't less valuable because I spent more time alone. In fact, I began to see my solitude as a strength, a sign that I was willing to walk my own path, even if it looked different from what society expected. It's funny, isn't it? How society often paints solitude as a failure, especially for women. We're told that we should always be connected, always surrounded by people, always available to others. But what about being available to ourselves? What about taking the time to nurture our own souls, to dream our own dreams, to live life on our own terms? That's the shift I want you to embrace. Instead of seeing solitude as something to escape, see it as a space to grow. Use this time to ask yourself the questions you've been avoiding. What kind of life do you want to create? What passions have you set aside because you were too busy meeting everyone else's needs? For me, one of the most transformative parts of this journey was rediscovering my passions. I had spent so much time trying to be everything to everyone that I had forgotten what made my own heart sing. But in the quiet of solitude, those passions began to resurface. I started writing again, pouring my thoughts onto the page without worrying about who would read them or whether they were good enough. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned years ago simply because they brought me joy. And as I reconnected with those passions, something incredible happened. I began to feel alive again. I wasn't just going through the motions of life. I was living it. I want you to know that this is possible for you too. Even if it feels like the world has turned its back on you, you have the power to create a life that feels meaningful and full. And it starts with the relationship you have with yourself. I often think about the way we speak to ourselves. Imagine if you talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself on your hardest days. Would you tell them they're not good enough, that they're unlovable, that their worth depends on how many people call them on their birthday? Of course not. You'd lift them up. You'd remind them of their beauty, their strength, their incredible value. So why not offer that same kindness to yourself? It's not always easy, I know. Sometimes the voice of self-doubt can be louder than the voice of self-love. But every time you choose to speak kindly to yourself, you're planting a seed. And with time and care, those seeds will grow into something beautiful. One of the affirmations that helped me most during this time was simple but powerful: I am enough. At first it felt strange to say those words. I didn't believe them, but I said them anyway, over and over, until they began to feel true. And the more I affirmed my worth, the more I began to see it reflected in my life. You are enough. Let those words sink in for a moment. You are enough exactly as you are in this moment. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. You don't need to earn love or validation. You are worthy simply because you exist. As we move forward, I want you to carry this truth with you. Solitude isn't a void. It's a canvas. And you have the power to paint it with colors that reflect your unique spirit. This is your time to dream, to heal, to grow. This is your time to find power in the quiet, to discover the beauty in being a woman who walks her own path. Remember, you are not defined by the number of friends you have or the invitations you receive. You are defined by the love you give yourself and the life you create from that love. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful shifts that can happen when you embrace solitude. The realization that you are your own sanctuary. It's such a profound, freeing thought, isn't it? The idea that you can create a space within yourself where you feel safe, loved, and enough, no matter what's happening in the world around you. When I first started this journey, I didn't believe I could be that sanctuary for myself. I thought I needed someone else to hold that space for me, to validate my feelings and tell me I was okay. But over time, I began to see that relying on others for that sense of safety and belonging was like building a house on shifting sand. People come and go. Circumstances change. And if your sense of worth is tied to those external things, it can feel like your whole world crumbles when they're gone. So I started building my sanctuary brick by brick. I began with small, intentional acts of self-care. Not the kind of self-care you see on social media, where it's all about bubble baths and face masks, although those can be lovely, but the kind of self-care that goes deeper. The kind that says, I see you, I hear you, I'm here for you. For me, this meant creating rituals that grounded me and reminded me of my own worth. I started journaling every morning, not to document my day, but to connect with my feelings. I wrote down my fears, my hopes, my gratitude, and even the things I was struggling to accept about myself. It was like having a conversation with my soul. And through those pages, I began to see myself more clearly. I also carved out time for stillness. In a world that's constantly pulling us in 100 different directions, stillness can feel almost radical. But there's so much power in sitting quietly with yourself, letting the noise fade away and listening to the whispers of your heart. Whether it was through meditation, a walk in nature, or simply sitting with a cup of tea and letting my mind wander, those moments of stillness became my refuge. And then, something amazing started to happen. The more I nurtured my inner sanctuary, the less I needed external validation. I stopped looking to others to tell me I was enough, because I had already started to believe it myself. I didn't need a crowd of friends to make me feel valued, because I was learning to value myself. Does this mean I stopped wanting connection? Of course not. We're human after all, and connection is a fundamental part of who we are. But I realized that the quality of my connections mattered far more than the quantity. I didn't need a dozen surface-level friendships. I needed relationships that were real, authentic, and aligned with the person I was becoming. And here's the beautiful thing. When you start showing up for yourself in this way, you naturally attract people who align with your energy. It's almost like a magnet. The more you embody your true self, the more you draw in relationships that reflect that authenticity. It's not about forcing connections or trying to fit in. It's about letting the right people find you and trusting that they will. But let's take a moment to acknowledge that even with this shift, there will still be moments of loneliness. There will be days when the silence feels heavy and you wish for someone to share it with. And that's okay. Loneliness isn't something to fear or run from. It's a reminder of your humanity, a signal that you're craving connection, not just with others, but with yourself. One of the most powerful things you can do in those moments is to lean into them. Instead of pushing the loneliness away, invite it in. Ask it what it's trying to tell you. Maybe it's asking you to pay attention to a part of yourself you've been neglecting. Maybe it's reminding you to reach out, to take a chance on connection, even if it feels vulnerable. Or maybe it's simply asking you to sit with it, to hold space for the feelings without judgment. I've learned that loneliness is a lot like a wave. It rises and falls, and if you let it, it will pass. But if you resist it, if you fight against it or try to numb it, it often grows stronger. So, let it come. Let it wash over you. And know that, like all things, it will eventually recede. I also want to talk about the incredible opportunity that solitude gives us to discover who we are beyond the roles we play. So often we define ourselves by our relationships, daughter, sister, friend, colleague. But who are you when all of those roles are stripped away? Who are you at your core when it's just you and your soul? This is one of the gifts of solitude, the chance to explore your true self, to ask yourself what you believe in, what you value, what you want your life to stand for. It's an invitation to create a life that feels authentic and aligned with who you really are, not who the world expects you to be. For me, this meant letting go of the need to please everyone around me. It meant setting boundaries, even when it was uncomfortable, and learning to say no without guilt. It meant trusting that the people who truly cared about me would understand and respect those boundaries. And it meant being okay with the fact that some people wouldn't. When you start living in alignment with your true self, not everyone will understand. Some people may drift away, and that's okay. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's simply a sign that you're growing, and not everyone is meant to come with you on that journey. But here's the incredible thing. The more you embrace who you are, the more you'll find people who do understand. People who see you, truly see you, and love you not despite your authenticity, but because of it. These are the connections that matter. These are the relationships that nourish your soul. As we continue this journey together, I want you to hold on to this truth. You are already whole. You don't need anyone else to complete you, because you are complete just as you are. Solitude isn't a void. It's a space of infinite potential, a place where you can rediscover your strength, your purpose, and your joy. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you, yes, you, for showing up, for engaging, for allowing yourself to sit with these thoughts about solitude and what it means to be a woman who walks her own path. This is no small thing. To reflect on your life, your journey, your feelings, it takes courage, and you've taken that step. So thank you for being here, for choosing this moment to connect with yourself in a way that perhaps you haven't in a long time. Now, I want to leave you with a question that has the potential to reshape your relationship with solitude. What if solitude isn't something to fear, but something to embrace? What if the quiet moments, the ones that can feel heavy and lonely, are actually an invitation to discover your deepest truths? What if solitude is where your greatest strength lies? You see, I believe that solitude is misunderstood. Society often treats it as a problem to be solved, as though being alone means something is wrong with you. But what if it's not a problem? What if it's an opportunity? When we stop seeing solitude as a lack and start seeing it as a presence, everything changes. Suddenly, it's not about what you don't have, it's about what you do have. Time, space, clarity, freedom. Freedom to explore who you are, to dream boldly, to heal old wounds, and to create a life that feels authentic and deeply fulfilling. I want you to think about this. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to simply be? Not to perform, not to please, not to prove your worth, but to just exist as you are. Solitude gives you that permission. It says, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anything. You're enough right here, right now. And isn't that a beautiful thing? I know, though, that this isn't always easy. It's one thing to talk about embracing solitude. It's another to actually live it. There will be moments when the silence feels deafening, when the loneliness creeps in and makes you question your choices. There will be days when you long for a friend to share a laugh with, a shoulder to lean on, or simply someone to remind you that you're not alone. And on those days, I want you to remember this. Feeling lonely doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Let yourself feel those emotions when they arise. Don't push them away or try to numb them. Instead, sit with them. Hold space for them. Ask them what they're trying to tell you. Because often, our loneliness is a signal, not of something missing in our lives, but of something we need to give to ourselves. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's the courage to reach out, even if it feels vulnerable. And when those moments pass, and they will pass, you'll find yourself standing stronger than before. Because every time you face the discomfort of solitude, you're building resilience. You're proving to yourself that you can weather the storms and still find peace within. One of the most transformative realizations I've had on this journey is that solitude doesn't mean isolation. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you're disconnected. In fact, some of the most profound connections I've experienced have come from my time in solitude, connections with myself, with nature, with my dreams, and with something greater than myself. When you embrace solitude, you create space for these connections to flourish. But let's talk about you. Let's talk about the woman you are becoming. Because I know that the fact you've made it this far in our conversation means you're ready for something more. You're ready to step into your power, to embrace the life that's waiting for you on the other side of fear and doubt. You're ready to stop apologizing for who you are and start celebrating it. What would it look like for you to fully embrace your solitude, to see it not as a void, but as a canvas, a place where you can paint your dreams, your desires, your hopes for the future? What would it feel like to wake up each day and know, deep in your bones, that you are enough, that you don't need to prove your worth to anyone because your worth has been there all along? Take a moment to imagine that. Close your eyes if you need to. Breathe it in. That life, that feeling, is within your reach. It starts with a choice to show up for yourself, to love yourself, and to trust that you are capable of creating a life that feels true to you. Before we part, I want to share one more thing. You are not alone in this. Even if it feels that way sometimes, know that there are others walking this path with you. Women all over the world are rediscovering their strength in solitude, just like you. And together, we're creating a new narrative, one that says it's okay to be alone, one that says your value isn't tied to how many friends you have or how busy your social calendar is, one that says you are whole just as you are. So, as we close this conversation, I want to invite you to share your story. What does solitude mean to you? How have you found strength in it? Or how are you learning to find strength? What fears or doubts are you still holding on to? And what steps are you taking to move through them? Your voice matters. Your story matters. And by sharing it, you may just inspire someone else who's walking a similar path. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going, not just for today, but for all the days to come. Because solitude is a journey, not a destination. And while we may walk parts of it alone, we are never truly alone in spirit. We're in this together, you and I. Remember this, you are enough, you are worthy, you are powerful, and your solitude is not your weakness, it is your strength. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for letting me be a part of your journey. Until next time, take care of yourself and embrace the beauty of your own company. You are extraordinary just as you are.